In her 10 years of life, Thalena had never been so far from her home. The small caravan is at its third day of travel, slowly moving during the daylight and camping at the first sheltered place they reach as soon as the sky is starting to fade into darkness. Even she knows that, with a couple of well-nourished foals, they could have reached what her father called the gathering point in half the time, but Thalus would not have it. A merchant travelling alone with his daughter is too much an easy target for rogues, pirates, and anything else they could encounter on the road which from Minagata now brought them to the edge of an ancient forest, very close to Hartford. So they joined a trio of dwarven craftsmen, an elderly Prillian diggerman, and 2 half-elven leather tanners headed for Eileden. The 4 carts, all modestly sized, are arranged in a certain way in order to form a mild barrier against intrusions. The mares, tightly tied, idly graze the grass, enjoying a much-deserved rest. A small fire has been lit nearby, protected from the insidious currents. Standing close to the campfire, travellers talk to each other after taking some refreshment. Thalena hears the voices overlap to each other in a soft chattering. No one pays attention to her, not even her father, who is arguing about the high price for Prillian like if he owned the lot. That is one of the moments when she misses her mother the most. That time of the day they used to have a herbal tea, sharing hilarious happenings of the day. Then Mum would brush her hair and praise how soft and silky it was. In the end, they would lie down together on a straw bed and fall asleep hugging each other, surrounded by a perfumed warmth. The sudden chill caresses her skin. She hides her tears before her father notices, and then she gets up to go get a blanket. She knows she has got to reach for the rear of the cart, a little distant from the comforting chatter of the group, and most of all, far from the only source of light. She hesitates, once at the edge of darkness. She would like to go back to her father, but something pushes her toward the opposite direction. Tomorrow they will come get me, she ponders. I will not be able to rely on anybody else but myself. She hastens her steps, hops on the wagon. Groping around, she reaches for a raw cloth folded several times, and she pulls it away. Again, she feels like crying. Maybe on that evening, that very last evening, she can still feel like a little girl. She runs to her father, grabs him by a sleeve.
Father!
Thalus suddenly stops, but he is not upset. He tenderly looks at her.
Can I stay here with you? I can't sleep.
Here. He makes room for her on the hides by his side. Thalena leans her head on his knees. She hears the chatter decreasing while the fire is fading and the embers become visible. After a lapse of time that she cannot estimate, they end up alone under tepid stars.
Father!
Her voice trembles a bit. You should sleep. A callous hand, after a slight hesitation, strokes her forehead.
Father, please, tell me a story.
Thalena does not have the tone of someone who's about to get asleep. Thalus keeps stroking her hair, so similar to Letha's, and he struggles not to think that it could be the last time he does that. How do you hide a bleeding heart to a daughter? A story? Let's see. I thought I told you all the ones suitable for a little girl. He gently strokes the slightly pointed tip of her ear and shakes it, making her laugh.
Then tell me something non-suitable. Something for grown-ups.
She dares. She's serious now. Thalus senses she wants to ask him about many things. Why did they get there, for starters? Why the next day he will hand her over to a stranger? Why did he choose to separate from her? Didn't she always follow him in all his travels? Maybe she was dead weight to him? His elven blood gives him the ability to physically feel the questions overlapping each other inside the mind of his daughter, while his human blood floods him with confusion and regret. Damn it. He must speak at once, or his voice won't ever come out of his mouth.
Okay then, I will tell you about,
He stares at the sky looking for an inspiration, because he really doesn't have a clue on what to tell her. Far towards Tir Valarath, a flash foretells a rainstorm.
Well, I will tell you about, the Great Glow, the fall and the trial of the sorceress who rebelled against the Alcazares,
he says all in one breath. Thalena lifts herself up, her pupils dilated for the interest.
What is it? I've always heard people talking about the glow, but nobody ever explained it to me. Mom did not.
Maybe Mom knew what made it happen, but she never told anybody. The glow has been one of the most mysterious and terrible magical happenings to ever take place in the whole Dunthuras.
Thales swallows. He doesn't want to linger on Letha. He doesn't want to feel the bite of regret.
It happened up in the great library of High Athenas, the whole continent's cradle of knowledge. It is known that the sages were gathering. For a long time there were rumors about a plot involving lots of important people. Someone discovered something that was not supposed to be revealed, but it was a long time ago. Actually, what everyone saw was a glow that lightened up the whole Dunthuras, from Tir Valarath to the mists of Nargotha. It shook the Alcazares in Barakzah, and it was felt even in the middle of the sea. An explosion that destroyed an entire wing of the Temple of Knowledge in High Athenas, nearly crushing centuries of history. Can you believe it?
Thalena bites her lip, her vivid imagination already at work.
And all this was caused by the wrath of a single woman, a sorceress with outrageous power.
Was she crazy, Father?
It is not known for certain. In that moment, maybe she was. She should have died due to the explosion of power that occurred, but she survived by morphing into a flock of crows that wandered everywhere to then gather on the main square of our capital city, Eileden.
I like crows.
Thalena reaches out with her arms like if they were wings, imagining to glide inside some air currents.
And what happened then?
The night light was back to normal, but the great sorceress's madness endured. In her fury, she unleashed a storm of lightning bolts. They say she was shooting the bolts from her very hands and eyes, not caring for their direction. Buildings collapsed, and over 300 victims were recorded before the Alcazares' guards, always vigilant in the dark, could cast a defensive barrier initially, and then complete a ritual which allowed them to neutralize the sorceress, finally apprehending her. They say it was 12 of them against her alone. Imagine how strong she must have been.
Sparks from hands.
Thalena moves her fingers, drawing circles in the air. Thalos pretends to ignore the slight crackling and the faint azure aura circling her tiny hands.
For the first time, having deliberately and openly broken the laws of the tower, a public trial to a living being with the gift was set up. Before, during, and even after the Battle of the Warlocks, they were considered above any law. We were trying to overlook any offense they would commit, or even letting them fix their own troubles with their inexorable dark spells. Brrr.
The half-elven man stops in order to raise his fingers in an exorcism gesture.
But this time all the continent had seen. The Alcazares had to move its own people. There was no other way than to take care of the matter out in the open. The great sorceress, still under a spell, was brought to Eileden's council palace. She was put to sleep for 7 days and 7 nights, while all of the kingdoms were sending representatives, and also the 5 mages were summoned from Barakzah. The trial was an unprecedented event. People talked about it for days, before and after its conclusion. Her family was present, but acted like they didn't know her. After all that sensation, they found out that she wasn't personally responsible for what had happened, but this came out after the tortures. The gods alone know how she could be able to resist, and she never gave up. She always showed an unflappable, haughty face, like a pillar of salt. On the first day, it looked like they wanted to execute her. A quick, clean, and somewhat plausible end for her. But the 4 representatives of the Alcazares were not unanimous, and everybody knew that in the end the decision would have to be theirs to make. When the second day ended, the punishment would have had to be worse than death, a curse, able to banish the great sorceress's soul between Alma and reality, in the realm of the sleepless spirits who would have devoured her little by little. They say that not even the young woman looked scared. And in that moment, one of the regent mages decided he wanted to save her and avoid wasting her power. The third and last day was that of redemption. The mage known as the Fifth Mask stood up amongst the Alcazares' people. You know about regent mages rarely showing their face in public, right? Well, the decision of Barakzah's high tower was clear as soon as he started talking. He wanted her to be pardoned. And, well, in order to obtain that outcome, he was prepared to use a powerful charming spell. The judges uncomfortably tried to bring up the outstanding amount of victims, but the Fifth Mask was ready to compensate each family with such an incredible amount of riches that even Tir Valorath's people were left speechless. Many years later, someone said that the Fifth Mage possesses the magic of voice, and that a lot of strength and determination are required in order to resist when he seldom uses it. The thing is, the tower claimed the great sorceress, and at sundown the trial was ended. The last time she was seen, she was stepping onto one of the wagons heading to Barakzah, her wrists locked by artifacts able to block her powers, and her face covered by a spider-shaped mask whose legs were wrapped around her head, inhibiting her sight, smell, and hearing, impeding her ability to speak. A moment of silence, interrupted by a pressing question.
And then? What happened to her?
Nobody knows what has become of her. What is certain is that after those 3 days, the use of magic became a lot more controlled. Many factions were born, and the Alcazares' reputation, very much compromised after what happened in the Stone Forest, was partly restored thanks to the public trial.
Thalena, staring off into space, nods.
Is it there you will send me, Father?
It is there that I hope they'll allow you, my one and only treasure.
Thalos fights against a tremor, rippling his lips.
You, like your mother, have the gift. It's both amazing and terrible at the same time. If they don't teach you how to use it properly, it could kill you like it did with, well, your mother.
He notices that fear is dilating his daughter's pupils, while the burning embers are reflected on her sharp face.
Don't say anything, dear. It is not necessary. Just you know that I love you more than anything else in the world, and I'm sure the people whom I hope to send you to will protect you and guide you like I could never do.
It will not be a farewell. Right, Father?
Now, a thin arm reaches for his waist and squeezes with childish desperation.
No, surely it is not a farewell.
Thalos leans a cheek against her fragrant hair. From deep in the heart, he hopes it is not a lie.